YouTubers and the community need to talk about team play more on Absolute. Let me paint a picture. You're playing on Decapitation, trying to level up on Absolute. I assume, they're going through Prestige or whatever. And honestly, yeah, Operations is still a great way to level up in this game. Sometimes you just need to play the game and you will level up. Your party is filled with similar players, no big deal. One of the players runs way ahead, even when you and another are back. They're fighting waves. Okay, so I see. This is interesting. I like the way they set this up, by the way. This isn't three level 25 Prestige 4 players. This is three 20-ish Prestige 2, 3 type players on Absolute. I assume they're prepared for Absolute. But okay, let's continue. Obviously, the title caught my eye. Triggering additional spawns and then dies. Because they're out. Wait, hold on. One of the players runs way ahead of you while you guys are fighting waves, triggering additional spawns. How did you trigger additional spawns? Then dies. Then your other brother, rather than fighting with you, just runs off to engage a different group of melee enemies, and then he drops, and then triple Lictor spawn. Okay. Who proceeds to perfectly layer undodgeable and follow through attacks, leading to an impossible situation that kills you. I see. Yeah, if you're getting attacked by triple Lictors, it's very possible that you can get roll caught, you can get caught in stun locks, and obviously, yeah, combos, all of that. Very difficult. So I see what they're getting at here. They are saying that since one player went off by themselves, died, there was a wave that was spawned, and then things started to snowball. Makes sense. I mean, even in this scenario, let's just assume that the second player who went down here actually went to try to res the guy who was already out of position, potentially putting themselves in danger as well. Yeah, I can see their point here. This is definitely pretty rough. I mean, honestly, if you guys watch me play the game, a lot of the times I'm keeping tabs on my teammates. I'm not too concerned with us being like right next to each other at all times. However, if there is somebody who's very far away from us, it's very easy to notice. And yeah, sometimes I will comment on that. Sometimes when I play the game, maybe I'm paying attention to my teammates a little bit too much, but a lot of that habit pretty much started just because I wanted to keep track of my teammates' armor and health. I think that is the most important part of teamwork, is keeping track of your teammates' health and armor. And if you don't know, armor shows up on the icon of their class. Basically the icon will be surrounded in gold if they have armor. So, yeah, not too sure if you guys know that, but yeah, that is the case there. So, but yeah, obviously when I'm playing the game, it definitely pays off to understand what your teammates are doing in general. In Tide games, people know by now, thanks primarily to YouTubers, that you need to play with your team. Ranging off solo is a great way to get killed and mess your team over by spawning a bunch of stuff on them, especially since this game loves to spawn things behind you. I'm not too sure what the correlation between dying and more enemies spawning is. Is there a mechanic for that? Does that happen? If it does, wow, okay. Sheesh, dude. I hope that isn't the case, but I mean, obviously, the snowball effect of things going from bad to worse in this game, that's very prevalent. So I guess I never really noticed if enemies spawned in, if somebody died. That's interesting. So we need people to talk about this more, like this post, so that less people queue Absolute than play like it's substantial. Play with your team. So many classes have abundance of crap that boosts other people's damage survivability, but when you run around like a chicken with your head cut off, swinging at random crap, then get all surprised when you get completely surrounded and die, you have no one to blame but yourself. Okay, so I will admit, when it does come to playing with your teammates, I think the class that benefits the most, if you are playing around the heavy, potentially you can get a really nice set of, buffs. Heavy, if they're playing near their teammates, should give extra damage and ability cooldown. That's kind of wild. That's honestly really, really good. Heavy has some great support perks. As far as other classes, though, I mean, Vanguards are definitely going to find themselves isolated sometimes, but yeah, it's up to them. They also, see, here's the thing. The tool that isolates them, the grapple, is also the same tool that can bring them back to the team. So I'm not too worried about them. Assault players, Assault's just so good right now. I don't mind if the Assault player goes off on their own because, well, okay, I don't mind if they're good at it. If the Assault player goes off on their own and just keeps slamming and taking things out, well, that's what the build does right now. That is what the Assault class does right now. It goes and finds priority targets and slams and does a lot of damage. And it honestly survives more the more destruction it does. So it's a great class, man. That is such a great class. Tactical, obviously. Team play, yes. Scan. Sniper, I'm not too concerned with, but like Sniper, here's the thing. Some of these positioning issues could just be that. It could just be bad positioning, which obviously goes into team play. But you have to keep in mind, Sniper wants to find an advantage with the LF and the Bolt Sniper, so they will be a little bit behind you, you know? So that's not really going off on your own. But yeah, I mean, I understand what they're getting at here. I did find another post that actually followed up this idea in it pretty much made the stakes a little bit higher. However, I do agree that more people need to talk about this. I've recently, we were playing, I forgot what it was. It was probably like the Hard Weekly or something. And yeah, we had a mortal wound on one of the players. I went in chat. I was like, hey, man, mortal wound guy, pick up the stim. You know, very classic situation. And yeah, the guy who was full health went and picked up the stim. And oh man, that was just, I don't know what happened. Maybe I was, you know, maybe I was wrong or something. I don't know. But I said mortal wound. If you have a mortal wound, pick up the stim. And then the guy with full health picked up the stim. I think that maybe is a little bit... Oh, by the way, that was a Vanguard. We could all heal. We all had unmatched zeal, which is nice. We were actually a pretty good team. But what really pretty much gave us the L there is the fact that our Bulwark was the one with the mortal wound, and he had, like, no health. I assumed he was going to be able to heal himself. However, mortal wound clearing is very important. So I think a lot of this, even if you go on comms and try to communicate, sometimes people just don't understand, and it's fine. You know, I leave things in the game. If something goes wrong in that game, well, queue up the next game. Maybe we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? So, yeah, ultimately, team play is definitely very important. Lack of teamwork is killing this game. I'm astounded by the lack of teamwork in this game. It only takes a little bit of awareness of what's happening with your team to make the game so much easier. Before taking the stims, quickly check the team's health. Yes. Dude, not to mention check team perks and everything, man. There's a lot of, like, deep mechanics in this game that people don't really understand. Especially if they're new. Like, for example, the icon thing I was talking about earlier. I mean, I guess deep is, like, the wrong word, but there's things you can miss, at the very least. It seems simple on the surface, but there's actually a lot to learn. But yeah, the icon thing I mentioned earlier about how to read your teammates' armor. Yeah, just gotta pay attention to their icon. If it's golden, that means they have armor. If it's not golden, that means they need an execution, or they need to find some armor. So it's always good to just read that, you know? And who has a pack already. If I'm not in a dire need of one, then ping it for whoever does. Dude, man, I will admit, I have seen some pretty horrid stuff. Even the story I mentioned earlier wasn't even, like, top 5 of the worst things I've seen recently. Like, the amount of people I've seen just, like, pick up stims and Guardian Relics and just not care. Dude, it's so frustrating, man. It is so frustrating. But yeah, honestly, when it comes to hard difficulty, it really only takes one misplaced stim, to put you guys in a position where you're at last man standing that you probably could have avoided. Or you just, yeah, fail. I've just rage quit, not a proud moment, because as last man standing, I just survived against Majors and Extremist enemies with just a chip of health left. My teammates spawned in and immediately took the only remaining health. See, okay. If this happened at the beginning of the mission, yeah, I'll leave. But if it happens at the end of the mission, we'll see. We'll see. The amount of times people hoard health packs is insane. Why do people need 2 packs when no one else on the team has any? Maybe I need to be more selfish with this? No. Honestly, it's pretty apparent the people who don't... I will say most people I play with know what they're doing. But it is very apparent when they're not too knowledgeable of what's going on. Dude, a lot of the stuff we talk about, like, here's the thing. Whenever we talk about, like, oh, people aren't paying attention to stims and everything, there's always some guy in the comments who are like, well, just teach them how to use stims in a video. And it's like, dude, we've talked about stim usage, mortal wounds, reading icons, reading team perks. We've talked about the best team perks. If you don't even need that. There's more than enough knowledge here to understand what to do in the game. Like, to be honest, I don't need to make a how to use a stim video. Like, come on. At least I'd hope not. If I do, hey, we'll get there. But I'd make enough gameplay videos to understand, or at the very least, I hope people are paying attention to the gameplay videos to understand how to use stim and mortal wounds and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess some things just can't be reiterated enough, because yeah, seeing people ignore their mortal wounds in hard mode is crazy. Also, if a team member is stuck behind, check in on them, especially if their health is depleting. Dude, this one I would kind of like to make a video about, but the only situation in my head that I really can point out is if the sniper is, having issues with moving through the level. It's likely because they're surrounded by gaunts, and they're not using the Inferno pistol. Because, yeah, with the Inferno pistol, the sniper should be able to do whatever it wants, essentially. Chances are they've been ambushed. Checking in and communicating keeps people alive. The games where my team have actually played as a team have been a breeze. I feel the selfish behavior just seems to be increasing. Are players getting more selfish? Interesting. I've seen some posts of people talking about that players may be getting more greedy, maybe. But yeah, I mean, dude, honestly, it really does pay off to make sure everyone has a stim rather than just leaving off one player, unless that player pointed out the stim and said they didn't want it. Dude, to be honest, this game gives you enough ping options and communication options that I don't really think you need to get on the voice comms for it. And to be honest, whenever I do get on voice comms, it's never good, because A, they don't understand me. B, they're also just muted everybody or something. I don't know. They're not on voice comms. And then C, it's like they still just don't understand the mechanic. Sometimes I get on voice comms and I'll point out, like, hey, you can pick up the stim, and they'll go back and pick up the stim or whatever. But still, most times, if I just ping at the stim, if I just ping it, people know, like, oh, okay, he doesn't need it. He's pointing it out for somebody else, So, honestly, a lot of the communication in this game is actually very important, for sure, but I think they gave us the tools for it. And I do actually appreciate the fact that people are pointing out the team play aspect of this, because, yeah, I mean, we can only talk about players not picking up stims so many times, you know what I mean? But yeah, I feel like this is a more broader conversation about it, and yeah, this definitely is something that has been a bit of an uptick, I will say. There has been a fair amount of players recently who have not been the, I guess, proudest team members we've had. Although these situations do happen, I have to say that on the whole, my experience with other players on Hard Absolute is positive. Most people ping stims, relics, armor for others that need them. Occasionally, you do get players as you describe, but it's not the majority, at least in my experience. I don't think it's killing the game. Lastly, I would say this happens more on normal stratagems with lower level players that don't know as much about the game. You would think, but I think I've seen, maybe I just noticed it more in hard mode, because in hard mode it's more detrimental, but in normal mode, yeah, if you have somebody just taking all the stims, I honestly, I don't care. like on normal mode, it's very, it's very chill. I like normal stratagems. They're very fun. You can find sweaty moments there, but yeah, a lot of the times normal stratagems are very, pretty chill. They're pretty chill, at least compared to hard mode, 100%. It really is such a jump to difficulty that I'm not surprised we see, these situations, because it's like you can get through normal stratagems without healing, essentially, or at least without clearing your mortal wound, and then you get to like hard stratagems or absolute, and you don't even notice that you were making mistakes in the past because the game didn't really check you on it. However, I will say you should notice mortal wounds, or at the very least, you should know how to clear mortal wounds, at least if you're in Ruthless or Lethal, you know what I mean? Getting to Absolute without knowing how to clear a mortal wound is insane, That's wild. Hey, you know what? Maybe a lot of people just aren't playing the campaign. They're not really getting those rules, fed to them. Honestly, I haven't played the campaign in so long. I really hope they mention something about, something about mortal wounds in the campaign. But yeah, regardless, if you're curious on how to become a better team player, just pinging items goes a far way. It really does. But yeah, if you ping an item and you don't notice anyone pick it up or anything, or, move to go pick it up, or they just walk past it, yeah, it's fair to pick up. To be honest, this is just common sense. Sticking with your team in a PvE game is 99% of the time the right choice. Some people are just dumb. That said, you're gonna find more dumb people in this game than you are in Darktide and Vermintide, primarily because this game sold a lot of copies. More players equals higher chance of encountering bad players, I guess. I understand. Wow, this is very negative. Space Marine 2 is also way more accessible than Darktide, especially you don't have to be a god to get through lethal or even absolute, but you have to be pretty dang competent to get ahead in Darktide. Yeah, honestly, Darktide, I feel like, I guess it depends in practice and everything like that, but I play a Psyker on Darktide. I haven't been in Darktide since patch 10 came out, patch 10 for Space Marine 2, but still, it is pretty interesting that like there is that sort of dynamic, especially considering that, yes, there is more players in Space Marine 2, at least at the moment. And as far as like the harder difficulties in Darktide, there is a lot of teamwork that is necessary for that as well. I mean, I'd argue there's probably more teamwork in Darktide, but I also don't know enough about Darktide to refute that either way. So let me know in the comments if you guys know more about that. But still, ultimately, I definitely understand where they're coming from. However, I just want to point out that it is definitely a lot easier, at least in my opinion, to get really good at Space Marine 2 as long as you practice and understand your mistakes. So I just think some people, especially when it comes to gaming, some people really love pointing the fingers at an excuse or whatever, and yes, I fall victim to that as well. Sometimes it's just, you just don't look at it correctly. Like, you're basically not looking at the situation correctly. For me, since I can go back and look at footage, there's moments where I'm like, I don't know what you're complaining about. You literally rolled directly into that Hellbrute shot. so like, some people will roll into a Hellbrute shot, get hit by it, and then complain about the damage. Sometimes, though, if you disassociate a little bit and look back on the gameplay, you'll find like one or two things you can, basically clean up. And I think that's a lot more interesting when it comes to, basically playing the game and getting better at it, is actually finding ways to improve. Kind of just, muscling through it is definitely something you maybe be able to do in Space Marine 2 up to a point, but yeah, if you find yourself struggling in this game, definitely try to stick with your team and just, understand healing and, making sure everyone has heals is very important, but also considering the fact that in Absolute, in hard mode, you really need built-in healing as well because there's only going to be so many stims to go around. Dude, but yeah, I really wish this game gave players, Siege mode is a pretty good way to get good at this game, you know what I mean? Like, but obviously we've talked about Siege mode recently. Normal Siege mode, at least if you stay in a group and just keep pushing waves, like if you're in wave 25 of normal Siege mode, at a certain point, you're going to be ready for stratagems. At a certain point, you're going to be ready for hard stratagems through that. And even though in normal Siege mode, even though the health pools are lower and everything like that, there's still a lot going on. There's still a lot of extremists. You get a lot of practice with taking out a lot of extremists. So then you're not, then literally the next step outside of hard siege mode is hard stratagems. I feel like normal stratagems, normal siege mode, I would think normal siege mode, at least in later waves, would be a little bit more difficult. So I don't know. I'm pretty much just trying to point out that it's very easy to get good at this game if you are paying attention. If you are really understanding what is working, what is not working, contested health, and everything that comes down to it. So yeah, you pretty much have to build up habits. Like for Sniper, did you get hit? Did you get hit really hard? Well, go into camo and heal yourself with purification. That sort of thing. But yeah, a lot of that knowledge is just built up over time. So yeah, honestly, you're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes it just takes time to get the habits, okay? So that's why we're talking about team play today, just because it definitely felt like there was a lot of players who were kind of not 100%, not 100% playing with their team and maybe creating some detrimental situations. I've also, of course, saw posts about it, so if there's enough posts about it and there's enough people who want to talk about it, yeah, I'm pretty much obligated to mention it. Even it's less about them putting YouTubers need to talk about this in the title and more about the fact that they talked about it and a lot of people agreed that more people needed to talk about it. So yeah, that's good. That's good. Ultimately, though, I think more players is good. And I think there's a lot of new players because of, the anniversary patch and sales. Like when Space Marine 2 is on sale or whatever. Yeah, we have a lot of players. Sometimes we have a lot of dumb players, but they're not always going to be dumb players. They will figure it out. But yeah, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this. And thanks for watching.